It's Chris. Liege Games. Baby. So if you thought last week wasn't scary enough with Lords of Ragnarok and Too Many Bones Unbreakable launching, well, I've got some news for you. We have Resident Evil launching this week, as well as Marvel Dice Throne. So if that's not enough to scare your wallet, well, you should have checked out my video from Thursday with the other 5 massive games that are going to be coming out in the next couple months on crowdfunding that are guaranteed to make your wallet weep as well. So, what else do you need to know? What else is going to be launching this week? Again, we have a couple games that could really sort of fly under the radar as dark horses this week. But, like I mentioned, let's talk about those big 2 first before we get into the rest, because they're going to get a lot of attention. They have the known IPs, and they're probably going to be raising a lot of the cash. So, as always, thanks for tuning in. Let's do this. So let's just go straight into it. Resident Evil. The 1. Not 2, not 3. Those are already out. We're doing sort of chop sequence, if you will, Star Wars movie reference there, of the Resident Evil games. We're going back to the original. We are going to the original survival horror genre and trailblazer, if you will. And this is going to be an interesting test. Because the first 2, frankly speaking, are relatively good under the radar, sort of solid games from a dungeon crawl standpoint, right? Now, if you go over to the Kickstarter preview page, why am I more concerned about this one than some of the other ones? 8,000 followers already. This is a big IP, folks. Like, I'm not a big fan of horror genre. I know a lot of people aren't, but there's also a lot of people that are. Now, again, Steam Forged, okay? Got to show me with the Bard Song, got to show me with the Monster Hunter. But just like with those others, they've started to get a little bit more information out here, especially when it comes to the Resident Evil, just like they did with the others. So that's very interesting. They talk about here, open world campaign. They talk about the exploration here, the designing of the player characters, how to actually play, exploration, and then the latest one, which I believe was just even today, the day I'm filming this, of they're doing more puzzles. The classic, infuriatingly frustrating, but yet captivating puzzles from the game originally, trying to capture the element of the puzzles themselves in the first place. And what's really interesting is the actual mechanics of this game, because you think dungeon crawler, you think zombies, you think, nah, zombie side, nah, those genres, nah. It is what it is, right? Well, they break it down here, and again, I give a lot of kudos to them. As much as you want to say about some of their past issues, this is more information and more transparency and a little bit more just of stuff that I would want to know prior to a game, especially if I was unsure about it. And so I really want to see more people doing stuff like this from the bigger games. And I'm a little bit confused as to why some of the bigger games don't. It's like, we do our thing and we can't do anything else. They get stuck in this rut, stuck in this pattern. But, this works. Look what it did for Monster Hunter. Look what it did for Bard Song. Now, you can argue that Monster Hunter had the whole IP behind it, but Bard Song, I think this really played to their strengths and got people really more interested in it beforehand, which is what you need to do with crowdfunding nowadays, because there's so many out there. I mean, I counted up last week how many games had 6 figures, and we're probably at about 12 games right now, at least, that are running 6 figures in terms of funding. So this is, as people have said, this is the golden age of things. And don't be confused. So the fact that some big companies don't do some more of this, they asked online the other week, a couple weeks ago, Steamforged did, who would you like to see us send this game to? I would be shocked if there's more than the 3 or 4 usual suspects, which is fine. But these big IPs have really gone to a select narrow few at this point, for blessing and for curse that it is. And so it'd be interesting to see how much we have, because it's turned out like with Lords of Ragnarok, where you've got like 1 preview and 1 review, and that's it, and no rule book. And that's why I like seeing some of this stuff, because at least if you're not going to have a ton of videos, I've got a bunch of the information out there already then, at least from that side of things. Now, what's compelling and what's unique about this? Player turns. It's just you go turn after turn after turn. But the actual turns are broken down into 3 phases. The action, reaction, and tension. Action is just you're doing your thing. Reaction is whatever is on the board, including the enemies, have a chance to react to what you're doing and move or attack or interact. And then the last phase is the tension, where you're drawing a card that's going to create tension on the board in some positive or somewhat potentially negative way. So different than what we have seen, where we are used to I take a turn, you take a turn, I take a turn, bad guy takes a turn, I take a turn, bad guy takes a turn, right? So I'll give them credit for doing something different, because that's what we're looking for with these dungeon crawls too, right? I mean, generic dime a dozen nowadays. Do something different to get noticed. Between this and then the exploration encounter, which is a little bit more like the Bard Song, where you're exploring this map and broadening it out, but you're also timed because you have that tension deck that I was just talking about that is the timer. If you run out of tension cards, you're going to lose 2. So you have to do it quickly enough. And they make it very clear that this is taking on the Resident Evil IP, where you don't have unlimited resources, folks. You're going to have to count every single bullet, count every single step, know when to attack and when to just frankly flee, just like you would in Resident Evil. Not to mention the fact that, like I mentioned, they're doing puzzles as well, too. So me, along with 8,200 other people, are going to be checking this out when it launches on the 26th. Now, again, is this for me? Am I going to probably be backing it? No. But it's got enough ring to make me heavily check it out. And that's kind of what it's about at this point. So check that out when it launches on the 26th if you're interested. Then we're going to back up a day and we're going to go to the other big one, Marvel Dice Throne. This one is going to be a roll, if you will, a roll of the dice, because I don't really know what to expect. Now, they've been very clear that these are not going to be reskins of other characters. But my big thing and my big issue with some of Dice Throne originally when I had Season 2 is a lot of the stuff was the same. Or very similar between characters. Like, okay, add a little damage here. Okay, do a multiplication of damage here. Okay, get a straight to do this type of damage. And you know, there were enough unique things, but there weren't enough to make me go like, each of these characters is as distinct as I would like. You know, I'm looking at something like BattleCon or Exceed or something in those lines that's going to give me more, where these are unique. It's not just slight variations of things. It's not a CMON Kickstarter expansion exclusive where you've got slight variabilities of things. And that's what I want to see out of this Dice Throne. Now, there's a list and there was a rumor of the ones that came out today, and Man vs. Meeple had 2 of their videos up here you can kind of check out. The first one is Captain Marvel, no surprise there. And then Black Panther, again, no surprise. I think there were several others like Thor, Iron Man, that sort of thing, where there wasn't really a whole lot of question of, oh, wow, that's, going off. People were a little bit hoping for something beyond just like the core Avengers at this point. That's the safe, that's predictable, that's somewhat less interesting. It's also somewhat more mainstream, so maybe it is going to attract more of the casual, and that's okay. Interestingly enough, there was a post on Boardgamegeek earlier, and it was really weird because I don't see it there anymore now. And I'm not sure if it got deleted, it got removed by mods, I don't know, but I took a screenshot of it on my iPad because they had a list of the characters. So you can, quote me on this if it's right or not, but it kind of went up there and we'll see. It was like a dive or something, a deep dive. Now, the other ones on the list, besides the Black Panther and the Captain Marvel on that forum list, were Scarlet Witch, again, very obvious with the tie-in recently. Thor, again, very obvious with the tie-ins. Loki, shocker of all shocker with the tie-ins. This is the only surprise on that list, if this list is accurate. Miles Morales, which, again, is probably the most intriguing one to me on the list, frankly speaking. Then, Doctor Strange, again, shock of all shocks. And Black Widow, shock of all shocks. Now, again, you've got like sort of martial artist, magical, web slinger, magical, thunder god, and magical. Not as much variety as I would have hoped, and not really outside of the core, what we already know in the Avengers style of things. Now, again, that's totally speculative, and maybe it got deleted because it's completely wrong. And I hope that this is not the lineup of things. I would love to see other more interesting characters from my personal side of things, but I can see why this is also widely mass appealing if this was the case in the first place as well. So Roxley does a premium game. It does a premium product. Man vs. Meeple's got the exclusive. I'm sure there's going to be a couple other big channels that have got exclusives as well. They're going to come out. But we'll kind of see, what it looks like on the day of launch, because if there's something like 8 characters, well, what is the price point going to be for this as well, And how compatible is it like the Exceeds, where you can have different seasons of 1 and 2 with the other, Dice Throne characters, and then will they be compatible with these? Is there going to be power creep? Is there, what's it going to look like from that side of things? How unique are these going to be? If you're going to make these, especially when I say like, okay, magic user, sort of magic and sort of, martial arts, but magic here, are they going to be distinctly different enough? That's going to be the biggest maker to break it for me personally, because I'd love to play this with my kids. It'd be a great access point, but if it's more samey with just slight tweaks, I'm going to be a little bit nitpicky, because I can also see it running me $100+ even for just those 8. And that's fine, but it's going to have to be something special for me to get it, as opposed to other things at this point too. So all in all, I'm intrigued. I'm going to be watching when it launches as well on that day, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. But Marvel Dice Throne. Now, we're going to get into the best of the rest, because there are some other under the radar ones flying out this week as well. And so don't sleep on these next couple either, because I think you could be pleasantly surprised, especially by this one right here, Power Plants. So you're going to be trying to grow these magical plants as a wizard in the garden, trying to share areas, but also get the best plot for yourself. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this does. 30-minute game, 1 to 5 players. I know they've been doing a lot of online testing in the tabletop simulator side of things. I've had a couple even invites on that side of things, but as you know me, I can't really do those that well. So it's been tough, because this is one I really kind of wanted to try out beforehand to see, because I could see this as a card game really being easy to get to the table. So, I mean, the gist of it, although this is the only picture on Boardgamegeek right now, is you have a hand of these garden plants or tiles or cards in your hand, and you're laying them out adjacent to other cards in the garden, and it activates its ability, but then it activates the ones it touches too, to a weaker extent, in order to, play and score and, activate other actions. And so it's sort of a comboing system like that. And so again, I really want to see this one in action, because this is, I feel like, one that could be a sleeper hit for me of the week, just because of the nature of it. Because again, I'm looking for things. I love the big stuff. This is the stuff though that's ultimately easier to get to the table on a night when I don't feel like playing something. And so this is the sleeper for me of the week from that side of things. And I think from kids table board games, you really need to just be aware as this side of things being really intriguing this week as well. So check it out. Next up, we have Megapulse. It's like basically the F-Zero of the racing games. And I'd been in contact with the publisher, the designer, but I think it just kind of fell through. So and I don't blame anyone. Like, I've been on the falling out side of things and forgetting to email people back, and I've had it both ways. And so this is just a busy industry with coordinating a lot of stuff, and especially when you're coordinating a campaign, I mean, that must be crazy. But it looks really interesting as a completely unique mechanic of what you're going to be doing, a little bit of take that in this lap racing game, like I mentioned, of the F-Zero type. There's going to be different modes that you're going to be able to race in, but you're also basically, in the gist of the game, is you're going to have 7 cards in your hand, and you're going to play 2 of them. And it's going to allow you to combo, to move, to, upgrade, or to even fire weapons, sort of a la the other inspiration that they say, Mario Kart. So again, it's striking true as someone who really doesn't have any interest in this type of game in the first place. So again, another one that I really wish I could try out hands-on, because I could see myself either with both these last 2 games, hands-on really determining the fun factor, because both of these look like solid games that are going to fund and not have any trouble, but solid games and solid games for you is really the issue, right? Because there's plenty of solid games out there that I would love to get. I'm looking at you, Voidfall, but it's just not for me. And so I'm not going to force a round peg into a square hole. It just doesn't work. That's how you get the Kickstarter overflow. That's how you get the Kickstarter backlog. That's how you get the Kickstarter, I'm selling off these in regret because I never should have bought them in the first place. And some of them I'll be able to flip for a slight profit, and some of them I'm going to lose a significant amount of money on, because I also just kind of want to get them out of my house. I'm not speaking from practice here, just theoretical, mumbo jumbo, if you will. So Megapulse is going to be really interesting because, again, there's nothing on Kickstarter really like it right now. And the racing games have been very hit or miss. And so this one could be another big hit this week if you're, interested in that side of things. And just like Power Plants, both of these are launching on the 26th, along with Kinghill. Speaking of me dropping the ball, the designer and I were chatting back and forth, and I've just been swamped with this. And, I work in a hospital, and hospitals are a mess right now. Don't kid yourself. And so this is a very interesting fantasy-based worker placement style game. And that was the other. And so I apologize, Peter Merrick, designer of this game, about not getting back to you sooner. Because again, this seems to have a very solid standing in terms of what it's trying to do with the mechanisms and, again, the theme incorporation. And this is another one. I mean, all of these this week that I'm talking about right now, all of these could easily be sleeper hits. This is probably from top to bottom one of the most solid weeks of crowdfunding, releasing new campaigns that I have seen in a while, because even the next two games that I'm going to talk about have the same sort of feeling. And so you can get a little bit of sense of what you're going to be doing here. But the interesting thing in this game is it's a two-player card battling worker placement style driven game. Again, I can't really think of anything else out there that I have seen of this ilk, which is either terrifyingly exciting or perhaps a little bit confusing and muddling. But again, I don't know because I haven't played it. And so it brims with potential. And so a lot of the other factors in terms of what else it's able to do and how neatly it's been able to do it are going to be the big determination for this. And I think this one could be really impressive as well, because, I mean, the aesthetic is there, the card laying, the card drafting, the 1 versus 1 is definitely up my ilk. So I'm going to be watching all of these so far. I mean, there's not a game that I have mentioned on this list so far in this video that I am not going to be giving a lot of scrutiny to as, whether or not I'm going to be backing it. And this month has already been bad enough, so I really don't need any more. But this is going to be another interesting play on things that I was not expecting to necessarily be driven by or like in the first place. So check it out. Kinghill launching on the 26th. Also launching on the 26th is Hegemony. Lead your class to victory. Now, I'm actually going to skip over to the description because I can't do this justice in terms of what it's trying to talk about and what it's trying to do with these very complicated, politically inspired images. And that's because it's an asymmetric, now get this, asymmetric political economic card-driven game that is more Euro in nature. And that is what you need to know. You have different classes thematically and being incorporated. The working class controlling the workers, the capitalistic class controlling the companies. The middle class is a little bit of both. Finally, the state is in there. So you have planning, actions, strategic actions, and political maneuvering to increase whatever the power of your class is and to carry out your agenda. And it talks about, okay, it's heavily based on actual principles with real world applications in the gameplay. So again, this one I could see going either way in terms of the mechanics and how people like this or how heavy it is. I have no idea what a market for something like this is. Is it going to be something that people are really intrigued by? Is it going to be a little bit too heavy, too close to home from that side of things? I have no idea what to make of it from that side of things, but it's looking like it's going to be something different as a Euro style game. So if you are into that ilk at all, I highly suggest you give it an eyeball when it launches on the 26th. Now, the last one up in terms of the ones that I'm really intrigued by is Hanamikoji. And this is the expansion to that, Geisha's Road. This is being launched from Emperor S4. And it's going to be really intriguing because this is a standalone expansion, a sequel, if you will, where you're going to be trying to advance your Geisha as far as you can. You are performing your art at the various tea houses in hopes of being the best performer. They call it a game with implicit intentions, hidden messages, and secret agendas. And so, again, that really intrigues me as a 1 versus 1 game because I have not played the original. And the question is this one going to be better? Is it going to take what the original has brought and not add too much or not change too much, but still make it dynamically different enough that you could have both in your collection? Or is this going to be a superior version? Or is this going to do too much and make it too complicated and take out some of the streamlined strategic play for a 1 versus 1 dueler game that the original has mastered so beautifully in the first place? I don't know. But again, I could see myself being very interested. Now, it looks super intriguing. you're getting the support or trying to be the one with the most support of each of the Geishas as much as possible, and the one with the most at the end wins. I could see this being a very low, easy to play, 2-player strategic dueling game with my wife. And so I'm looking at it from that side going, if this is striking all the chords, but this is also one where I go, why am I getting this on Kickstarter, right? Why am I backing this on Kickstarter? Because I think they had one of the other versions of Hanamikoji on Kickstarter a couple years ago, and it was just like a male version of Geishas instead of female. And so there wasn't a whole lot of incentive exclusive-wise to pick it up then versus waiting. And that's the big question in this game. That's what it's going to entail, and that's going to be along with the price point of will I pick it up or not. So it looks solid. I'm intrigued by it. I'm super interested as a 2-player game with my wife, but I just don't know. What we're going to talk about this week is Catapult Castle, and this is actually from Mayday Games, and they've had a little bit of an issue in the past. This looks like to be, it says people were saying, sort of a copycat of Coconuts, the dexterity game, and so that was the concern. There's not really a whole lot of other information out there about it, but it's going to be launching as well this week, so just be aware, and it'd be interesting to see how quick in, close to Coconuts it actually is when it does launch, and what it looks like from that side of things, and will it just be a re-theme, or is it going to be uniquely, dexterously different from that sense? So if you're interested though, check it out. Name 3/4 of this excites me. Batman. Escape from Arkham Asylum. Be bad. Night Games. Which one of these is not like the other? Now, I say that, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical here, but Night Games with their Harry Potter licensed version was not terribly impressive at all from the miniatures game side of things. I believe they also had a Quidditch game. I'm no idea where that's at. That was crowdfunded as well, though, I think. This is a different take on the Batman saga. Instead of being the Batman, you are instead the villains. It's a dungeon crawler, as they say. You're not Batman, you are the villains. And so if you break it down, okay, you are, now they say revolutionary. Again, you've heard me say this. When you describe your game in that sort of adjective, you better deliver. DC Comics, again, I was just commenting with one of you guys in the comments on one of the videos this weekend. DC does not have great representation on the board game scene. It just doesn't. And you're going to be using one of these. Now they call it, again, semi-cooperative, which is a little bit iffy there too, especially since you're going against the game. How are you going to appeal? Now they say dozens more, maybe hundreds. I mean, come on, let's be realistic here. And then they go through some of the pictures and some of the miniatures. I mean, the models are not the issue here. The models are not a problem. There's plenty of cool things from there. But I need a game to go with this. I need a really good game. This is all it says. Prepare your plan. Think fast. Escape the wardens. You're going to have tools. You're going to have annoying other inmates. Full of life. Tons of skins. I don't want skins. I don't want skins. Give me a game. It's launching on the 26th. I mean, skins. Again, I just want cool game. So that's the question. Now, the nice thing is they at least have a little bit of updates here, and they break it down in terms of what you can expect a little bit here. Here you have event cards, things that are going to happen when you receive them. And honestly, the description of these is actually relatively interesting. It gives conditions and handicaps to the game to make it a little bit, 1, harder. 2, if there's 2 of these certain nailed markers in the certain area that are from these event cards, all of a sudden, guys are going to come to stop you. And then 3, you can suffer consequences and you can pass them along to your opponents. Now, again, another little news gossip that they put out there is an actual gossip. Things that you're going to have to earn, usually by solving a test. And if you're the only one in there. So, I mean, it's a little bit of something different, but how is it going to actually work? And you have to actually get enough of them before you can actually enter the end phase of the game. Again, interesting. How am I going to see it in action? 2 other quick things of note that they've already put out there. Again, trying to give a little bit more information. Now, I wish we had some more pictures to go along with this. It's just text, but I hope they have some gameplay that's, or at least a rule book that we can look at. Unknown map, essentially. You don't know what's going to be in the cells, what's going to be in the corridors until you cross them. And so you're not going to know everything that's in the game. There's going to be stuff that's out of your control. So you're going to have your head on a metaphorical swivel in order to know what's going on around you. So then they talk about the alarm system right here. And that is the last update with this security system. And as it goes across, if you reach the end, you lose. And as you go up from green to yellow to red, more difficult opponents are going to be set in your path that you're going to need to be aware of. And the different alarm levels are also going to matter as well. The different alarm levels are going to matter down here because this is the round tracker. So if you reach the end of the round and no one's won, well, then game's over too. So again, a lot more information than we've seen with some of the other night games, but I need to see the sum of the parts, not just the individuals, to make me go, okay, is there going to be more of a game there than some of the predecessors? And I hope there is, because this is a unique concept. I like the concept a lot, but we'll see when it launches on the 26th how it fares. Also launching, I believe, on the 26th is Monsdrawsity, Unusual Suspects. And this is the Shut Up and Sit Down collaboration. If you're not familiar with Monsdrawsity, basically one person describes a monster and the rest act as sketch artists trying to draw the closest representation of what the monster actually looks like. It's more of a party game. It's more of a have fun, have a few laughs, draw something silly, and people who like that are gonna like this. Shut Up and Sit Down doesn't put their name on a lot of stuff, and they like this sort of thing. And if you like this sort of thing too, it's probably going to tickle your fancy. So hopefully check it out when it launches on the 26th. Now, last up, we have Damnation, the Gothic game. This is a relaunch from, I believe, about two and a half years ago, 2018, 2019. They're coming back trying to launch a licensed version of this 1992 game where you are taking the role of one of these bad guys in this Gothic castle, vampire castle, if you will, and you're just going head to head trying to eliminate each other. But the house is going to be rigged against you, but you are also going to be trying to upgrade your skills, your abilities, and we're ways of getting rid of your opponents. And as you eliminate your opponents, then the castle is going to get more lethal in its own way as well. And so again, the aesthetic is kind of cool. It's a little dark for me, and it's another interesting concept. But is the execution going to be there? Is the price point going to be there? Is it going to make it unique enough that people are going to go, I need to get this, especially with all of the competition that you've already seen from last week, 2-3 weeks ago, as well as this very week in and of itself. So launching on the 26th, check it out if you're interested. I mean, that's about it. But as with this past week, when there were like half a dozen to 10 different games that launched without any warning, I imagine that there's going to be more than a couple this week too. But this is a bad week to be going up between all of those ones I just talked about and all of the ones from this past week with Ragnarok and Too Many Bones, and just all of the other big ones still going on. Beast finishing up, the One Deck Galaxy, all of those ones just sort of in the mix, floating all nebulously. Verdant is finishing. Everything is just sort of coming to a head now towards the end of October here. This is a sadistically cruel month in terms of our wallet's sanity. So we'll kind of see where it goes from here. I'm hopefully going to have a couple videos out this week. This next coming week's worth of editions. Hopefully some thoughts on a couple games, including While Sent Levon Rising and Limbo War Eternal. I may get my Vagrant Song review out. If you did not check that out, check out the overview and a quick one-player, really solo, two-handed run-through with spoilers of Scenario 1. I'll tell you right now, it's really feeling like it could be a heavy contender for one of the games of the year for me. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly at all. So that's that. I've just been streaming random Nordic noir and that sort of thing. I watched a Canadian one called The Wall, which was it's a serial killer concept sort of thing. Those Who Kill in the Shadows is what I'm watching now. Again, just some very dark stuff. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It's sort of, I'm in between. I think there's a good, Korean drama coming out in the next week or so. And then I'm really super pumped as a side note, if you're not familiar, which some of you may not be, and you can skip over this, obviously, The Wheel of Time is coming out on Amazon next month. And that is probably the first big epic fantasy series that I read and still holds a special place in my heart as one of my favorites, even though, let's be honest, after about book 5, book 6, it kind of took a spin there for a while, and even the ending wasn't nearly as good as it could have been. Now, again, obviously, with Robert Jordan dying, that made a whole difference because it just wasn't the same. But at the same time, it was like Game of Thrones. It just couldn't tie up all the loose ends, and it kind of tried to tie them up, but it was sort of anticlimactic with the way they were built up in the first place, and there were a lot of lulls and anyway. But either way, I'm really excited because it looks like it's getting more of the Game of Thrones treatment as opposed to like the Shannara treatment, which was on MTV, which was sort of this teenage, we find the prettiest actors that we can, but they can't act worth trash, and it's just kind of cheesy. Like no, man, you can't take an IP like that and mess it up, because then no one's ever going to want to do it again. So, you know, hopefully we see some better stuff out there. Other than that, there's just not a whole lot going on. I don't really have anything else here. I'm usually going to ramble about something funny or interesting at the end of these videos, but I got nothing today. I got absolutely freaking nothing. So I'm just going to put the hood back on, kick back, and call it a day. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me. Stay classy. I'll see you around. Baby!